Welcome back. It's Anthony Hales Jr. This is the Legacy Hustle Podcast. We're back for episode 2. Today, I got my friend, Dr. Robert Jordan, the president and CEO of CSW, and I'll let him tell you what that stands for. A great company here in DC. So today, we're just going to talk about his story, talk a little bit about my story, and hopefully, we can give you some gems that'll help everyone out there who's looking to start a business, grow a business, or kind of reach that next level.
No, definitely. It's been a long time. And since we was at the Rhode Island Row apartment complex, and you was in the gym, I was in the gym, and we didn't even know that the wives knew each other. And we was doing the same thing. We was both in the Department of Education at the same time. We was both doing these DC government contracts. So my story, the short version is I was an advisory neighborhood commissioner in the city, and I was doing that pro bono, volunteer basis, and doing the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Programs. At the same time, I was a consultant with Booz Allen and then Octo Consulting Group, and at the Department of Education as the enterprise architect for the Office of the Chief Information Officer. So was doing the federal government contracting while doing my passion, which was the local community work and building up education, occupational training programs brick by brick until the day I had to leave my main job because the side piece became the main piece.
So let's actually go back to that because, like you mentioned, we were both at the Department of Education. We both had companies. We both had employees. We both were threading the world between trying to manage a staff and complete your work at your day job. So I think I left. My last day was September the 13th, 2018. I remember the exact time, date, and hour. I remember the music I was playing when I walked out. So for you, just walk me back to that day, that time period. How did you know it was time to quit? And like, what did you go through, like, process-wise?
But before that, what was the song you was playing?
Oh, The Thrill Is Gone.
The Thrill Is Gone.
BB King. Yeah. So the Thrill Is Gone.
Man, my last day was when we had, our first big $1 million contract, and there was a pop-up site visit, and I was at my 9-to-5 job and tried to quickly exit a meeting, rush down North Capitol Street, and get to that site visit in time, and missed it. And that was the day I knew, the CSW had gotten too big to stay working 9 to 5. So, I immediately, backfilled my position with one of my good friends and vice president of the company, and that ended up helping flip that contract eventually to being our first big federal government contract with the Department of Education. So we could talk about that kind of strategy later, but that's what happened. And I was full-time now every day at the Family Life Community Center on Rhode Island Avenue, working for CSW.
And that's not easy because I know you had a wife and kid, and I left. My daughter she wasn't 1 year old yet. Like when I left, I remember just the thought is like, it's all on you now. And even though I knew that the time was coming, I was making more money outside of work than I was at work. I had previous supervisors who were okay with what I was doing, as long as I got my work done. I had a new one that wanted to micromanage my life. So it was, at this point, it was no longer a sustainable situation. But I do just remember the fear of like, that fear. So here's another question, like that decision to tell your spouse, I'm finna quit. How did that go?
I don't feel like it was I don't remember it. Yeah, it was actually a big thing. It was a big thing because she'd always known about the company, honestly. Yeah. I had that company at the time I met her, but it was more of, are you sure there's going to be enough money? It was always about like, how much money are you making exactly here? Like, is it going to be? And I'm like, it's not. It's going to be, there's going to be no change from what the pay schedule, when the checks come in and the amount of the checks. It's going to be the exact same. Living up to that and making sure that there was no disruption to the household made her feel comfortable. So it never was an issue after like that first month. She saw, the payments on the 10th and the 25th come in still, and we were good.
Yeah, see, again, for the fellas out there, this is one of the things, because I get that a lot, like, hey, my partner doesn't necessarily support me. You have to make them believe. And the biggest thing is, right, hey, it's a fear of you leaving the full time and just making sure that the lifestyle doesn't change.
Money fixes everything on that. If you're going into this and you're borrowing money from them, oh, that's going to ruin the relationship, and the business isn't really ready to take off yet.
And it's like before, when you're working full time, you have the business. It's play money, right? It's vacation money, right? It's daycare money. It's things you can do with side pot. But once you're in there full, it's a different management. And before we move on, I actually tell you, I mentioned this probably in the last show. When I actually left my business the first year, we probably lost $125,000. So not only did I leave, I left and everything like went straight down to the pit. So like the whole rebuilding. All right, I want to shift a little bit. Let's just kind of talk about being a business owner, things that go into it. Like one of the things for me that's really big is kind of like my morning routine. I'm not a cold plunge guy. I am a cold shower guy. Like cold shower, workout, and like mentally just preparing myself to go deal with all of the headaches of being a business owner. So, Dr. Robert Jordan, right? You have a lot of clients. Some of them very challenging, some of them very friendly. Like, how do you prepare yourself each morning for like to get into the grind?
Honestly, that's the difference. I wish I was that disciplined in the morning. Honestly, trying to just make sure I got matching socks sometimes when I get out the house. My preparation's really coming at night, and this is not like a you should do it like me thing. This is out of necessity. I've always kind of gotten a lot of the work done between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning, because that's when the kids are asleep, the wife is in the bed chilling, and I have that quiet time where I can just listen to the background music, Little Brother, anything Pete Rock, and just crank out proposals, applications. That's my only personal time to actually do the serious work, and it actually takes away from the morning routine because you can't do that more than 2-3 times a week, and even like once a week now hurts more than it did when I was late 20s, early 30s, where I would do that. I would write 3 proposals in 3 nights, just in the zone. And when you're doing it that frequently, it's just like when you build up stamina and you're running miles. Like you can run 2 miles a day. It's easy because you just do it all the time. So now it's still like the night times when I get the most done. I just can't stay up as long as I used to. Yeah.
It's interesting. I used to be a 4:30 wake up guy before I had kids. Even after my first kid, I was up every morning at 4:30, and now that had to shift to like 6:30. So it is more about late nights than it is early morning, because you said everyone's sleep. I can actually have some quietness in the house. I'm not overtaken by emails and calls, because
yes, the day is always random.
Yeah.
Right? Because you get a call from a contract officer said, "Hey, do you have this, this, and this? I need you to respond right now." Or, "Did you know you need another $1 million in insurance, or else we're not going to award this contract?" Like that becomes the priority, and those things can take over your day. The staff issues. Somebody locked themselves out of the front door. Like now that is like whatever you was planning on working on. Now you got to try to find a locksmith or something that it was not planned. Not planned interruptions absorb a lot of the day, hours.
And you have a bigger staff than me, I think. So I understand that. That is one place where I had to put some barriers. Like when we first started growing and expanding, because it was like my core team of like 3 to 4 people at first. And we were more so like a group of mercenaries. Like everybody kind of knew what they were doing. People could manage themselves. I really didn't have to worry. Like once we started expanding and bringing in more employees, particularly entry-level employees, it's just like 1,000 headaches. Mr. Hales, I can't get into my timesheet. Mr. Hales, I can't do this. And you start getting a million phone calls and questions.
So-and-so makes 25 cents more than me. So yeah. I think they should do the work then, since you paid them more. Like, shut up, man. I mean, yes, employees and staff bring their own set of issues and can absorb time.
And it's funny, like when you're an employee, you see the world one way, and once you go into business, start hiring people, you start to see things a little differently. And even the way you look at people, you see people, I hate to say it, as potentially liabilities or assets. almost like you see on the spreadsheet, like this person is an asset, this person is potentially a liability, or I may like what this person does, but I understand that they come with risk, and that's a whole different world. I would say that we talk about different levels. That's one of the differences between like having, let's say, $100,000 company to managing a $3 to $5 million company is now there's more people involved, and you start to deal with some of the things of people management, which I would say in business is the hardest thing. You'll never master it. It's just you just try to improve as you go along.
Yeah, and one of the big things that CEO has to do is they have to never run out of money, and they have to hire really good people. And the really good people part is way more difficult than I originally, understood, because when you first start off, it's you, and it's like the people that always had your back day one, or you've always liked working with in your other careers. But once you run out of those people, you have to go hire somebody from the interview process. You start realizing that it is, a 90-minute interview doesn't let you know anything about somebody. Same way you could date somebody, or you meet them out in the club or at a networking event. The first, I would say, 3 months can be smooth, but after that honeymoon period, you start realizing this person ain't really for you, and start seeing people for who they are. And that's the same way that employees can sometimes be like, you start seeing what they actually are willing to contribute to the overall value of the organization, and notice that this one person seems to call out sick every Tuesday. I wonder what they actually do on Tuesdays. It's not working for me, but they still, want to get a full check. And, I don't understand how that works. So, yeah, there's a lot of people issues, especially as you expand.
Yeah. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit. Let's talk about, you mentioned earlier about your client base. It's like myself, you're heavy into the local government contracting space. Somewhat in the federal contracting space. We'll actually talk about that as we go along. But just for like the people listening, kind of explain the difference between selling to the private sector and selling to the public sector, and kind of what that entails, how you have to change your approach.
So, federal government contracting, state and local contracting, then the private sector, it's completely different. I could say in the private sector, it seems like it's faster pace in terms of you can get set up, you can start making some money quickly, but the engagements are definitely not 5-year, one base year, 4 option year contracts. It's like, hey, I need this right now. And if you do an amazing job, you might get some additional work that might be adjacent, or if you're adding a lot of value to them, they're going to just kind of keep feeding the beast until you plateau, whatever that is. And that's every industry. I don't care if we are managing nightlife or restaurant, or we're doing products. It doesn't matter. If it's continuing to generate a lot of money and it's profitable, they're going to keep feeding whatever you're doing, because that's adding value to the organization. On the government level, it is slow startups, because there's a whole solicitation process. All solicitations have to be done fairly. Everyone has to have equal notice. They have to score everything, and then they have to go through an extended accounting approval process and issue out a purchase order of some sort, so you can invoice a month and a half later after you start work. So you have to have a larger bank account and runway to kind of sustain yourself, or be working a separate job.
Yeah.
And then you can actually start generating money. But once you generate money, it is typically at least a guaranteed year, and then multiple base years. And you have to do an amazing job in the private sector. And they score it like this: satisfactory, exceeds. They have, you just need to be above, satisfactory or above. And you will continue to basically work that contract throughout every option year, because it takes so much work to reissue it. And that's very costly for the government.
Yeah, one of the things I tell people, it's harder to get into the door, but once you're inside the door, it's a lot easier to stay there. So client retention, in my opinion, in the government is easier client acquisition is harder. Also, one of the things I will say, just kind of my personal experience in the space is the government, unlike the private sector, I feel to a degree can pigeonhole you. If I know you for this, I'm only coming to you for this. Like in my experience, once you get in the government and a contracting officer, contracting specialist trust you to deliver, they will ask you to do 1,000 different things. As you know my story, like I was a graphic designer. We came in doing annual reports. I now have contracts to do drug testing. We do a lot of events. I resell IT software. So it's an aspect of like, and I think you used to tell me this, right? You are what your clients are willing to pay you to do.
Say that.
Until you reach $10 million, right? He's like, until you reach $10 million in sales, you are what your clients pay you to do. So in that aspect, when people always ask me like, what does Bain do? And sometimes like the easier question is, what does Bain not do?
What does Bain get paid to do?
Yes.
that
solve problems, right?
No, because a lot of people will be like, we're solving the diaspora between this and that. Wait. But does anybody? But you actually get paid just to like print out hats.
Yes.
Like it's not. I'm not knocking it. Just so you have this hat business money,
right?
And you at some point would like to move it into something else. But right now you're really just selling apparel. With the government thing, one thing that I heard that stuck with me and it's just a straight fact is when I was at Booz Allen, they would have these all hands meetings like, hey, 97% of our work is recompete.
Yeah.
So their big thing was provide the best customer service possible. They had us dressing in suits every day. Like we were supposed to be, the premium government consulting choice. Because again, it was so much harder to try to win a new proposal, a new scope of work versus just extend the relationship with the client. That client acquisition is so hard in every business, but in government, it's even more complex because you have designators, size limitations, NICS codes, all these different other variables.
It's very hard. And somebody used to tell me if the first time a potential client is introduced to your company is in the RFP process,
you already lost. Yeah,
there's a 1% chance of winning. You can get lucky. I mean, I had a few lucky wins where the people didn't know me because literally we were the only bidder, and that was more so of the calendar of they put a solicitation out the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and it was due the Friday after Thanksgiving, so no one was gonna sit there and respond. And so I spent Thanksgiving and I wrote a proposal, and it turned into a $75,000 contract.
Yeah, and you got your foot in the door in something, right?
Yeah.
And I've done that too, where it's like lowest bidder, those
a loss leader.
Yeah, it's like, or you're just taking risk and you may not know exactly that industry, but you can meet the requirements and you come up with some pricing that no one else has. So that like those invitation for bids sometimes are like that, where it could be like a race to the bottom, or maybe occasionally you just have a more innovative way of doing it because you haven't been in the industry and you have a different architecture that could actually provide better, cheaper, faster.
I always say inside baseball, right? One of the things, this is going to sound so predatorial, but I always say, right, if the more I can get a client to depend on me to fulfill their core needs, the better it is for business. And when budgets start getting cut, there's least likely that my services will be on the chopping table. So for me, it's like if I take on a client and they're asking me, can I do this? I may have never done it before. Long as it's feasible, I typically say yes. Now, there's a couple times I've burnt my face off doing it where like, hey, I know I said I can do it, but we really can't do this, y'all. I think I tried to sell some software for a company and it needed to be a government reseller, so I had to go back and ask them to like let me out the contract because legally I could not sell what I told them I could buy. But they asked me to bid on it, so I bid on it. But I also find that if I can make an agency or a client dependent upon me, like just by taking over much stuff as possible, it embeds me and it helps me stay there longer term. And now again, it's inside baseball where like I'm not necessarily looking at new business. I'm looking at how can I expand my scope within an existing client. And then also what happens in the government space a lot is people get promotions to other agencies. And what happens is they tend to take their vendors with them.
Yep.
and you can benefit from the aspect of this person left, so now I have a new agency I'm going to, but also the person who is going to get pushed up, right? The person who gets the promotion, I have a good relationship with them. So as you're keeping a client and gaining a new client, I think that is a very great philosophy that I've just personally kind of used.
Well, anybody who's trying to be indispensable in any situation that's a good character trait in general. And it made me think about how I went to Carnegie Mellon Information Systems Management grad school, and I didn't have an information systems or computer science undergrad like everyone else who went there. But I had a mentor who introduced me to the Carnegie Mellon people for a summer program for information systems. And during the program, I quickly realized this is a feeder system to full scholarships at the grad school.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everyone else in the program that kind of read between the lines. So there was, a task nobody wanted, which was looking at this software product where the professors had opened it up in the back end. So there's all these just random labeled fields, and it's not like, telling you exactly what it does. And they're like, we need to get this information from this nonprofit into these fields and make the software work when we import it. Somebody has to map how these fields work. And nobody wanted to do it. I did it, stayed after late. But again, becoming indispensable. So now I'm the only one with the master key of how the data that we have to get into this system is going to marry to each other. And that's basically how I got into grad school. Being indispensable, taking on the job nobody wanted. But I think there's kind of two philosophies I see people run with. Some people want what they call max min, like they want to get the maximum output in terms of salary, promotion, raises with the minimum amount of input to get there. And then there's people who have kind of a max strategy, which is I'll give you the max I can do to try to get the max out of the situation. And there's an argument for both, where like some people say work smarter, not harder. And I don't like that or agree with it. Because typically, in order to work smart, you've had to work really hard to learn how to play the game better.
Yeah.
You just can't, nobody just pops up and just knows how to be smart in the industry. It's those hours you put in when nobody's around that make you smart enough to then do it. The hard work you put in when no one's around is what makes you smart enough to take shortcuts. Or not even shortcuts now, they're just improvements to whatever you're doing.
Gotcha. All right, to shift the conversation along, you were one of, in the workforce space, I remember some years ago, you were very innovative in helping your people get interviews by, you were making them take their GEDs off of their resumes, and you were enrolling them in free certificate classes when they were first rolling out like the Ivy League. So you were putting your students in like a Harvard or a Yale, getting them one of those free certifications and putting it on their resume to increase their hit rate on resumes. Mm-hmm. So I remember that, and I was like, that was very smart. Like, we now in the era of AI, right? How has, in your opinion, AI impacted the contracting space, the spaces you're in, and how are you using it to just kind of stay competitive now?
I can't believe you brought that up, but I'd love to talk about that. So that was when I was still in the industry. I was at Booz Allen. I was using Lean Six Sigma all the time, as well as the project management, professional certification, Agile Scrum. And when I came to teach more DC courses, and this was at DC Infrastructure Academy when it first opened up, I brought my best game to the people that I was in front of. And it was actually an expensive certification, but I said Lean Six Sigma is my favorite methodology or approach to solving problems that I see. And I think it makes the biggest impact in how you can think through any situation in any industry. It was like a chess kind of impact for me. And when I brought it to DC, the DC Infrastructure Academy, and started teaching it, it was crazy because, some people said, these people ain't gonna be no Lean Six Sigma people and ain't gonna be, doing nothing with Lean Six Sigma. These people is for, on some real, the Django, why is he on that?
Yeah.
like for real. And I took offense to it, but what happened was later on down the line, I actually had to do a hearing and testimony for the DC City Council, and a lot of those students just happened to be at that hearing testifying, and all of them was like, we loved the Lean Six Sigma course, and they put that in the testimony, and I was in the room, and it was like, that was the moment I was like, you got to do what you think is best, and you let people kind of rise up to the level of their full potential, but you don't prejudge them and say they won't be able to comprehend or use it, or that's going to be up to them. And this, it's a long life. So, where you are right now doesn't mean you won't be able to be somewhere later on where it makes sense and it makes an impact for you. We were doing the Dartmouth Lean Six Sigma certification programs. We started at DCIA. They still do Lean Six Sigma with another vendor there, but I still feel like I'm the grandfather of all Lean Six Sigma certifications in DC. If you got it from a DC government program, it was not here before CSW. I was the original Dartmouth instructor, issuing out all the Dartmouth Lean Six Sigmas. If you got that on anywhere on your resume, that's a CSW stamp, right?
Gotcha.
And branded.
It's actually brought up 2 points. Actually going to lean into. One is you mentioned city council. So this is particularly for a state and local contracting issue, understanding like advocating for programs that will benefit you financially, or as essentially having to fight for like if something's gonna get cut that personally impacts you, getting ahead of those fights and like the importance of that on local politics level. In the second one, it was talking about kind of like risk of this industry. When you mentioned about them using your certification, another just risk out there for y'all is dealing with local contracting is sometimes people take your proposals and give it to your competition.
They absolutely do. They absolutely do. Hey, this sounds real familiar.
Yeah.
I love this idea. And then you think back, like, I wrote this 3 years ago, like verbatim, like the same words. I've even seen people use the same price, and I pull my pricing out of, out of my, just really, it's not based on it's not based on the maximum you get, it's based on, so that for you to come up with the same price, exact price on some things is lottery level coincidence.
Yeah, so a friend of mine, he wants something. He said, hey, I only submit an hour before a proposal is due. He said, because you don't know who's on the back end of that submission. You don't know who's on the back end of that email. And I don't know who they're going to send it to. So I want to eliminate any risk that they'll have significant time to take my stuff and send it to somebody to compare. And so for me, that's always been one of my things. Even if I finish a proposal a week before it's due, I will time it to be sent in like an hour. I give myself an hour in case there's anything technical difficulty wise, but I will submit an hour before. But back to that's another thing in the game dealing with like local and state and outside the certifications, which we'll talk about, is relationships. Like this is very much a relationship game, and navigating, managing relationships, determining what fights to take, and just because there's something we all do favors, right? There's some things necessarily aren't beneficial for you, but it's beneficial for a relationship. So just talk about like how your experience like navigating relationships in this space that's so political.
It will help you if you go in understanding that there's going to be times where you are going to need to willingly get thrown under the bus, because the consequence for the contractor being the scapegoat is way less severe than the program office being the scapegoat. And typically in those situations, when the opportunity is presented for somebody to try to make it right, they have, right? But depending on the situation, you might know that something is going to go left, and you're not going to be in the room when they discuss like what went left, and just assume that your part is going to be maximized and everyone else's responsibility is going to be minimized, because that's just kind of what people do. You can still have a relationship with those people, and I've definitely been thrown under the bus and then asked to drive that same bus a year or two later.
Yeah, right? I've been thrown under the bus. I've been put in the paper. I've dealt with those things. And sometimes the hardest thing is to just keep your mouth shut. I mean, some people better. I've had one person, right? They called me and told me, look, I need you to take the fall for this. I got you. It's like, I'm gonna look out for you next year, but right now I need you to take the fall for it. It's like, hey, so hey, it was my turn to fall on the sword. But yeah, so it's always easier to blame stuff on the contractor. There are sometimes what I have learned over the years is if I see something that's not going to work, I am now at a point where I'm willing to be more vocal about stuff beforehand because typically I can see something's not going to work and it could not be my idea and I can know this is going to crash and burn and I'll watch it crash and burn and then we get blamed for it. Or sometimes there's things I see I know will crash and burn, but I need to let it crash and burn so they can see that it won't work. But those are where it's a more ingrained relationship. But taking the fall, the cost of, and we say this all the time, right? And sometimes I've had to say no to certain things because we're being asked to take on risk. And if the things go sideways, I get no benefit of the doubt for being willing to take on a risk.
Nobody's going to remember that risk at the end of the contract that they asked you to take on at the beginning of the contract. They're just going to ask you why your numbers are low, why the outcomes weren't there, and they're going to exclude the fact that they brought you in and said, hey, we need you to have a hot start. We know it's supposed to be a year long, but there's only 6 months left. You know, all these things that are significant factors. We're doubling the number of people we're giving you.
Or you get the solicitation 3 months late, so there's dates that are due. Another things we do, right? We do grant reviews. So we've taken on grant competitions where I need to recruit 30 grant reviewers over the weekend to start next week working on the grant. So I'm putting posts on LinkedIn and reading through things on Sunday, trying to just figure out. And there's a lot of trial and error in that. I do want to go. This next thing is to talk about over the last 2 years. A lot has changed in the government space, right? You yourself, I don't know if we can tell the story.
I can tell you.
You got walked into a room and had 1.5 million cut.
Oh, yes. I mean, that wasn't just me. So that's one of those things where at this point in my career, I've made money, I've lost money, and I've been the person in the room who was listening to other contractors, vendors complain to the government. And I'm like, man, they messing up their money. They need to keep their mouth shut. Try to get this, like try to get these government contracts.
Yeah.
And then I've now gone through the full life cycle, and I've seen how it wasn't that they didn't have the etiquette or didn't understand the game. It's that they've been in the game so long. They were trying to alert people that, hey, these, the things that you're asking us to assume, the risks we're taking, or if we're not paid on time, or if people, default or leave the program early, it's going to cause all these financial issues. And being, in 2018, the youngest provider of, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act trainings, and now being arguably the oldest. Tony Thomas has been out there for a long time, but that's been taken over by a Hope Project. But like in terms of like running the leader, being the president CEO of in that space, I've been now the oldest one, which is not a pat on the back. It's more scary because why didn't all these other people survive? If there was 8 or 9 people providing these services for DC residents in 2018, how has the entire class changed? And now I'm the oldest person in the class. And it's because those people who were, speaking out at the meetings, they have all been, eliminated, perished, had to exit the industry, which is really bad for the general public who was supposed to be getting the maximum number of training opportunities and services. So, at this point, I am trying to speak up as much as possible, as respectfully as possible. And if there's a change to be made, it's changes that really help small businesses, people doing the work, be able to survive and thrive. Because the turnover is bad for everybody.
Yes, and that's one of the things, because I'm also at the point, right? I'm 10 years in. Well, look, almost 12 years in at this point now, right? As a company, 10 years we've been doing contracting work. So I get a lot of people reaching out to me now, wanting to know like how to get here. And I tell them the truth. You have to plan for the long game. You have to be strategic in what you do and where you work at, and understanding that the market can shift, and that as a company you have to be willing to make the shift. It's all the conversation I have a lot on this vlog is about wit versus depth, right? Like building depth, like becoming an expert in your industry versus finding multiple streams of income. And so what I have kind of found is things shift, the spending shift. So when I first started dealing with the government, we made most of our money in communications work. Over time, the agencies have built up their communications shop. So though a lot of that project those things have kind of went internal. So now there's like external activations are a much bigger part of the process. When Doge was running amok last year, right? I assumed that a lot of our events, external stuff was going to get cut, but that's actually what got increased. What got cut was our admin stuff. So we had probably 5 or 6 people working in admin temporary jobs. Those were gone. Those working on grants are gone. And a lot of that stuff now, AI is kind of taking over, so that isn't coming back. What's actually grown for us is kind of like now we're in this digital world is we want real world interactions. But as a company, we had to be flexible enough and kind of read the market, the place, and say, hey, this is where I think things are coming. This is where it looks like things are dropping, and being able to just kind of forecast and adjust. And that's one of the things I think as a business, if you're looking to grow, looking to sustain, is you have to be able to read the room. You have to be able to read the market, and you have to realize like when the winds are shift and it's time for you to kind of change course.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In 2025 was a big year where it wasn't just the winds were shifting. It was a hurricane season. Yes, I mean literally there was someone in the White House, not elected official, that was wielding a chainsaw, overseeing Doge informally and cutting contracts. And then at the State of the Union this past week, they were celebrating the end of DEI, which I think has taken on a whole nother meaning. Diversity, equity, and inclusion was never about underqualified black and brown people getting high-paying jobs. That's never happened in this country before. It's not. I've never seen, and I mean, I've been in the federal space, state and local space. I've never seen anybody who was unqualified
get a job. And I'm with
right? Get a high-level director, secretary position. Is typically somebody who has like every credential, military service, everything you can list. And they was just been getting passed up, and now they were now being prioritized to make sure those people don't get passed up anymore. So it's mind blowing to me now that
it's actually the opposite. But I'm gonna leave it. But I'm gonna leave it there. I've seen founders come up with some great concepts and go blow 15 million of investor money, 15 billion of investor money, and we can go through the companies who not Uber. Like we can go just talk WeWork. We can go through this name of companies where you had these founders. They were given heaven and they quickly turned into hell. And a lot of them end up getting second, third run. So actually, yeah. And
different space. So I think everything we've kind of talked about is the grassroots entrepreneur that's trying to build up to a small business and then to maybe a medium-sized business. And that is if you are doing everything right and you are a little lucky, you can get to, 100 employees and things. But like something I do want to quickly touch on off script is the big boy companies play a completely different game.
Yeah.
And if you have investor money, what seems to be the play is create something, get everyone addicted to it by undercutting the price of it, artificially lowering it, and then once everyone is now accustomed to it in their lifestyle and have some skin in the game on it, now we jack the prices up and have eliminated any opportunity for a small business to come up with a better product because I have the critical mass of people. And just kind of give you a run through history lane. YouTube used to have no ads. Once they collected more content than anybody could ever go out and get themselves, now YouTube sends you an ad every 30 seconds. Sometimes you can't even watch anything before you watch an ad, right? Uber rides. We was here when Ubers just came to DC. You could go from Southeast to Northwest for $9.
Nice.
Right, I used to go back to New Street, like, hey, we just get to Uber, like, so much cheaper than a cab. And then the cabs were telling us, hey, they are playing, y'all, and now it's $40 in rush hour to go from, Southeast to North. I got people working here that spend the first 2 hours of their paycheck giving it back to Uber and Lyft, right? And then if they eat lunch, now 3 hours out of your 4-hour day is gone. So the big boys are taking investor money, keeping the prices artificially low until they remove all the medium and small level players. Then they skyrocket the prices up when there's no more competition in the market. Your classic monopoly. And I can't stop it. It's a great play, but just want to make sure everybody kind of sees these plays because even when they gave out all those Gmail accounts for free, right? That wasn't free. They now have trapped all your pictures, all your data, all your information about you, and now they run targeted ads straight to you. Like, have you almost been like, I was just thinking about buying this, and now it's sending it to me. I didn't even search yet.
It's actually interesting. It's probably gonna be
and now they charge you for the storage for the rest. I don't know how to turn off my Gmail storage. I can't even go back through all those files and pictures.
So it's actually interesting you brought that up because it's probably this is gonna be my last kind of topic, and the difference what he just talked about with the big boys in the private sector. In the public sector, the protection against that, right? What protects that from happening there to some degree, we can talk about. Some people scheme and game. It is certifications, right? So like DC, anything that is below 250,000, they're typically going to send to. They're going to reserve for certified local companies. If it's above, there's typically a 35% subcontracting requirement unless you can prove that there are no one in the field to do it. Now, what we used to see before they cracked down was mailbox companies. So large companies will start subsidiaries, or just people would rent a mailbox in the city, but they'll be based out of like Delaware, New York, Maryland, but they'll just go rent a mailbox and act like they operate in the city and compete as a local company. And I won't say the name of this company. The other trick I see a lot is there are bigger companies. Someone will start a smaller company that's essentially the same company, but it operates as a smaller company and they share staff. But they will use that second company to compete as a small and local business, and even on bigger contracts as a partner to the larger company. And it's not necessarily playing with like equal arrows, but say like the importance of certifications. If you're a small company looking to do business in the government space, like certifications are super important because that is actually what is going to give you a chance to try to get your foot in the door. Because if you're a mom and pop competing on the open market against T-Mobile and a bunch of giants, like it is good luck. If you're small, local, and you're competing against 5 companies, now you have a decent chance, at least someone looking your way and say, I'm interested in working with them or giving them a shot.
Yeah, and then that's what should be talked about more. So that's why I said DEI it's kind of a
boogeyman now.
Yeah, it's a false statement the way they're kind of spinning it, but it's really something that's more personal. It should be like, do you want people who are starting up to have a chance to win contracts, get bigger, innovate things, figure out ways to maybe lower the price, put a better product out there? Or do you want to, kneel and kiss the ring to only the top 5 companies in any industry that are ran by a handful of billionaires that just want to meter you and, set up tolls where we have to pay subscriptions for everything and be 100% relying on, their judgment? And so that's what the DEI programs for small disabled, veteran-owned small businesses, women-owned small businesses, all of these things we're trying to do is let's limit the competition so we can still create innovative things and develop smaller companies that can then hopefully compete with the big companies and ultimately bring things faster, cheaper, and even better to the market. Because as you can see, when you have one or two players in any industry, the prices go up and the quality of the service goes down because there's no one to compete with them. You have no other option. So your internet's down. We'll send a technician out there when we feel like it. If you had another option and they'd be like, we'll come out today, you're going to start going with them. Once they eliminate all those other options, that's what the government is trying to avoid. That's what all that antitrust is about. Is not giving people who are unqualified a chance. It's all about making sure qualified people get a chance to compete.
And protected marketplace. So that's the importance of the hub zones, the disadvantaged business enterprises, the 8A programs. So for anybody watching this, this is the importance of why those programs exist. And with that, we're going to close out. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Rob.
No, man, always, man.
All right, always. So good. Legacy Hustle, episode 2. We out.